questions have been answered to his satisfaction. The parties acknowledge that this is the intent.
Not enough to swear, Mr. Cullen, at this point.
You do swear the testimony you give the court in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please state your full name.
Charles Cullen. And you spell it C-U-L-L-E, is that correct? Good morning to you, Mr. Cullen. During your first appearance on Wealth of Pennsylvania, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
The New Jersey counties and the Pennsylvania counties agree to work with their respective governor's office to permit you to be moved to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for purposes. Do you wish to plead guilty this morning?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Mask, would you be kind enough to elicit a factual basis for the court?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, you certainly may. Yes, this is going to take some time again. If you...
Did you inject Ms. Stoker with any medication?
Yes.
And was it your intent to cause her to expire?
Yes.
And what agent did you use to accomplish that intent?
The Johnson.
You had access to that patient at Somerset Medical?
Yes.
And you injected that patient?
Yes.
Without authorization?
Yes.
With the intent to cause death?
Yes.
And in fact, that patient died?
Yes.
And the agent employed by you was?
The Johnson.
Accordingly, the court accepts the plea of Mr. Cullen, and we will schedule the matter for sentencing in a manner that allows for the terms and conditions of the plea agreement being carried out. Yes, and I was going to... Yes, Judge.
The machines beeped in rhythm. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Families clutched hands in waiting rooms, praying for good news. Doctors passed in a blur. Nurses charted vitals, adjusted IVs, whispered reassurances. It all looked normal. Comforting, even. No one suspected that behind those sterile walls, a quiet man in scrubs was choosing who lived, and who wouldn't. He didn't scream. He didn't stab. He simply stood there, with a syringe in his hand. And smiled. For 16 years, patients across multiple hospitals collapsed without explanation. They came in for routine treatment. Stable. Talking. Alert. Then, hours later, they were gone. Gone without trauma. Gone without a code red. Just, gone. Autopsies came back clean. Death certificates listed cardiac arrest, respiratory failure, textbook endings. And no one asked why. Until someone finally did. Because behind the clipboard, behind the stethoscope, was a man who would later confess to killing at least 40 patients. A man many believe may have taken more than 400 lives. A man who was supposed to care for them. He had a license. A schedule. A name tag. His name was Charles Cullen. And he was hiding in plain sight. Hospitals are supposed to be sanctuaries. Places of healing. But what happens when the threat comes from within? At first, the deaths seemed like bad luck. A cardiac arrest here. A respiratory failure there. Elderly patients. Critical patients. People who were already clinging to life. But then, it started happening to the strong ones. The stable ones. The ones who were getting better. Until they weren't. Some said it was coincidence. Others whispered it was incompetence. But what no one was willing to say out loud, what no one could imagine, was that the man walking room to room in quiet shoes, the nurse they trusted, was doing it on purpose. This isn't the story of a serial killer who hid in shadows. This is the story of one who wore a name badge, clocked in on time, and smiled. A silent executioner. Patient by patient. Death by death. Charles Cullen was the kind of nurse every hospital wanted on staff. Quiet. Efficient. Polite. Never raised his voice. Never showed up late. He was a ghost who followed the rules, clocked in early, and volunteered for the night shifts when most staff were too exhausted to think straight. He kept to himself. Never caused trouble. Never raised suspicion. To patients, he was gentle. Soft-spoken. He remembered their names. Their stories. He even remembered the names of their children. He would place a comforting hand on a frail shoulder, smile, and say, "You're looking better today." To grieving families, he was the one offering tissues, quietly arranging pillows around the body, or calling a chaplain when someone passed. His presence was reassuring. Predictable. Safe. But for Charles Cullen, that trust was the perfect disguise. Behind that calm demeanor was something else. Something no one was willing to see. Over the years, he moved from hospital to hospital, more than 9 across 2 states. Always leaving quietly. Always with a glowing recommendation. No one ever dug too deep. If a patient died during his shift, that was the cost of critical care. If 2 died, it was a hard night. But if it kept happening, no one wanted to be the first to ask why. Some coworkers praised him. Others said he was strange, but harmless. No one expected he was the reason patients weren't waking up. He wore the uniform of a healer. But the numbers told a different story. At St. Luke's, at Somerset, at Lehigh Valley, patients admitted for simple conditions were suddenly coding without warning. Collapsing. Dying. And always, he was there. Just before. Just after. But even then, hospitals looked away. Because Cullen had learned the greatest truth in healthcare: if you're quiet enough, and wear the right smile, no one wants to believe you're the reason someone died. In a hospital, death is not unexpected. People come in sick, sometimes terminal. Doctors fight. Nurses try. But occasionally, they lose. 1 death is mourned. 2 is a tragedy. But when patient after patient, young and old, stable and recovering, suddenly crashed without explanation, some staff members began to feel a quiet sense of unease. It started subtly. A patient in room 304 who was recovering from pneumonia, flatlined. No warning. No prior complications. The staff called it sudden cardiac arrest. Then came another. A woman in 409 recovering from surgery, sitting up in bed, talking to her husband. Within hours, dead. It happened again. And again. Code blues became routine. Defibrillators rushed down hallways. Crash carts wheeled in panic. Yet often, it was already too late. The connecting thread. Each of these patients had been under the care of the same nurse during their final hours. Charles Cullen. The problem was, Cullen wasn't assigned to terminal patients. These weren't end-of-life cases. Some were just days from discharge. Others had been improving steadily. But Cullen's shifts left behind a chilling pattern, a trail of bodies the hospital tried not to see. Charts were quietly marked. Causes of death were vague: cardiac arrest, natural causes, respiratory failure. Few autopsies. No toxicology. But behind those codes, something unnatural was happening. Hospitals are built on routine. Monitors beep, charts get updated, night shifts blend into morning rounds. But beneath the surface of Somerset Medical Center, the rhythm had changed. It wasn't just that patients were dying, it was who was dying. Strong patients. People expected to walk out within days. Individuals who'd responded to treatment, showed stable vitals, and were even joking with staff during lunch, only to be found unresponsive hours later. It was happening too often. Too suddenly. And always, when one particular nurse was on the floor. Charles Cullen. At first, no one dared say it out loud. Nurses blamed fatigue. Doctors cited complications. But the numbers didn't lie. Cullen's shifts had more death certificates attached to them than any other. He was always there. Quiet. Helpful. Always offering to cover an extra shift. Always volunteering to watch the patients. And yet, wherever he went, the lights dimmed. Inside the break room, nurses began whispering. Unspoken suspicions slipped between sips of coffee and hurried chart reviews. Why is it always him? One asked. Another replied, he's got the worst luck, or something else is going on. There was no evidence. No smoking gun. Just a pattern. An invisible trail that most didn't want to follow. Some raised concerns with supervisors. They were told not to jump to conclusions. HR called it paranoia. Doctors called it stress. And the administration? They quietly looked the other way. No one wanted to accuse a colleague. Especially not one so well-liked. So mild. So normal. But trust is a fragile thing. And on the ward, it was cracking. In a hospital where death is no stranger, suspicion is often the last response. Grief clouds judgment. Statistics can be explained away. But it only takes one set of eyes, one person willing to look a little closer, to see what others missed. That person was a pharmacist. Routine. That's what he thought it was, just another standard request in the system. A vial of digoxin. Another of insulin. But something didn't sit right. The patient receiving the drugs didn't need them. Not even close. It was an error, he assumed at first. Maybe a typo. A clerical mistake. But when he pulled the records, he saw it had happened before. And before that. Dozens of times. Same nurse. Same drugs. Same results, sudden cardiac arrest. No warning. No cause. The pattern was undeniable. And terrifying. The nurse at the center of it all. Charles Cullen. Cullen wasn't just giving meds. He was selecting his victims. He would wait until no one was watching, pull the curtain closed, and inject a fatal dose directly into the foreline. Digoxin, used to strengthen the heartbeat, but in high doses, it stops the heart. Insulin, used to lower blood sugar, but when abused, it can crash a body in minutes. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He blended in. A ghost in scrubs. The pharmacist reported it. And this time, someone listened. The hospital initiated a quiet review. They combed through pharmacy logs. Medical charts. Medication dispensing machines. And there it was, a trail of death. Silent. Calculated. Signed off with Cullen's name. Each log. Each overdose. Each unexplained flatline, it all pointed to the same cold conclusion. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't miscommunication. It was murder. Hospitals are supposed to be safe. Clean white walls, steady hands, hope hanging in the air. But what if the person in charge of saving your life was the one silently choosing to end it? He wasn't a monster in the shadows. He didn't lurk in alleys or chase his victims down. He walked brightly lit hallways. He made his rounds. He offered words of comfort, right before the heart monitor flatlined. One hospital noticed something off, but brushed it aside. Another saw the pattern, but didn't want the scandal. A third? They handed him a glowing recommendation. No warnings. No accountability. Just a clean record, and a new batch of patients. By the time authorities caught up with him, he had worked in over 9 hospitals. Each one carried stories of unexpected cardiac arrests. Sudden deteriorations. Families left stunned by the speed of it all. He confessed to dozens. But the truth? The math never added up. Too many records lost. Too many lives ended without questions. The real number of victims may never be known. And he didn't use a knife. Or poison. Just insulin. Digoxin. A quiet injection, unnoticed. He knew exactly how to kill without leaving a trace. How did no one see? Or did they? He wasn't working alone. Not exactly. He had help. Not in the killing, but in the silence. Hospital administrators. Colleagues who had doubts. People who noticed strange patterns but chose not to speak. Because to confront it would mean accepting the impossible, that a man trusted with life, had become an angel of death. So ask yourself, would you notice the signs? Would your loved one's death raise questions, or be filed under natural causes and forgotten? He's in prison now. But the trail he left behind still stains the charts of hospitals across the country. And this case, it's not an isolated one. Do you believe he acted alone? Or was this a system that failed, again and again? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you want to know how he was finally caught, how one nurse, against all odds, blew the whistle, subscribe. That story is coming next. And it goes even deeper than this.